Hey everybody, my name is Paul Esden Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. Make sure before you do anything else, like the video, hit subscribe. Show some love for a Jets brother in arms. And speaking of brothers, I've got my very own, a brother from another mother. Yeah, that is Connor Rogers. And let's bring him right into the show. And again, he does so many, he did up the hair, he SNY, PFF, Bleacher Report, Badlands. I mean, come on, people. Connor Rogers has joined the show. What's up, Connor?
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man. I don't know what it's gonna take for you to be in the ring for WWE or
Sure. Yeah,
UFC, whatever it is, man. If you ever decide to get away from this illustrious YouTube channel, I
sure.
think you got a future there as well. So it is much appreciated, man. What's going on?
Not much. I will say, Connor, and I feel like we've discovered the formula. So we had you back on in March, okay? I was begging for subscribers on the street. I was one of those hobos with a tin cup. Subscribe, please, subscribe. And Connor Rogers drops by, throws a nickel in my can with a little dink. And before we were under 1K, all of a sudden we're flowing, baby. We're over 2,000
Oh, you love to see
subscribers.
it.
And again, coincidence? I think not. Connor Rogers on the show equals ratings, baby. So I got to thank you for putting some bacon on the table for my family.
Dude, no problem. I won't take that much credit for you. It's funny. Someone said to me the other day, they're like, why don't you do YouTube? And I was like, man,
Yeah,
at some point you got to draw a line in the sand. I can't get on these. I love YouTube. I love going on shows like yours.
yeah,
Obviously, at PFF we use YouTube a
right.
ton, but
Yeah,
for my own channel, at some point I have to make a decision and eat dinner once in a while and do some
sure.
laundry. So I'm gonna leave the YouTube to you, Paul, and you're doing a great job.
Well, I appreciate that, pal. Well, first off, I didn't even have this on my list, but why not YOLO, I guess? What was your first reaction to the Zach Wilson dating story?
I mean, you know what? Number one, who knows if it's even true,
That's true,
right?
right?
Who knows if it's even true? I think it's what we do know is true is that his former roommate, obviously a college wide receiver that I watched a lot of coming out of that draft class, was a close friend of his, is now apparently dating his ex. Obviously, nothing cool about that at
No, man.
all. As for the comment from her about the mom stuff, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if it's true, but I'll say this for Zach Wilson, this was good PR for him.
Mm.
Everybody's loving Zach Wilson this week. He's got a little street cred coming into camp, it sounds like. So I don't know what the hell's going on, but I think for somebody like Zach, he might have thought, oh God, could be a disaster. Probably woke up and his phone was chaos in a good way. So at the end of the day, it was good PR, I guess. What a strange God. You can never just have a dull summer in Jets land.
Never the case, which is great for my show, I guess. But I got to say, PFF NFL Stock Exchange stock up for Zach Wilson. There you heard. You heard it there, Connor
It's
Rogers.
stock up. Zach Wilson, he was the Stock Exchange Music Hits GIF this morning. So he's
Yes.
on a little bit of a run right now. So hopefully he carries that momentum into some big time training camp practices and some good football this year.
There's Zach Wilson, of course, is talk of the town. Beefed up, this, that, girlfriends, moms,
Oh, all the
I mean,
offseason talk that has nothing to do with football that you could ask for is
not at
going
all.
his way.
Exactly. So I guess let's get to the football element of this. Everyone has been talking about. I've heard you on all the shows. Expectations, this, expectations, that. Plainly, what are you hoping to see just in training camp? We got training camp. We got 3 preseason games. What are you hoping to see from Zach Wilson? Because again, at the end of the day, it's training camp and preseason, so you have to take that for what it is. But what are you hoping to see as we get into the regular season?
It's pretty simple for me. It's command and composure, right? It's the fact that you can come into that locker room. It's a little bit of difference this year, right, Paul? Whether it's he's been in Utah, obviously went to BYU, comes in the locker room last year. It's probably a little bit of a culture shock for him, especially when you were the guy at that school, and then you go to a place like New York where being the quarterback is always tough. Now you've had a year where you took your lumps, and it was a tough year at times. That first half of the year was real tough. I thought he looked pretty good in the preseason, so it was a little disappointing how much he struggled in the first half of last year. But at the end of the day, he really figured it out the second half of the year. He limited turnovers, he managed the game. I think you'd like to see more explosive plays from him, but he had a second half that gave you some promise going into this year. Besides all the nonsense that we've heard this week, I think there's a different street cred level coming into camp this year where guys are going to look at him. They're going to be a little bit more confident in him. They're not like, who's this 21-year-old kid coming out of BYU that has never been on the East Coast in these kinds of conditions before. And I'm talking about the conditions of the pressure, the expectations, the media, everything that comes with that. I think there's a little bit of a comfort level. So if you can transition that to on the field results of command of the offense and composure when things aren't going your way, then that's going to lead to a really big year for Zach Wilson. And the rest will fall underneath that. The running plays, the explosive downfield throws, the moxie, the swag, all of that will follow if those two C's at the top are consistent week in and week out. So that's what I'm going to have my eyes on with Zach Wilson. If he misses a throw in practice, it's not worth tweeting about. It's not worth panicking about. If he throws an interception or if he throws a touchdown here or there, you just want to see the consistency build and show command of Mike LaFleur's offense, which I think has a lot of promise due to his brain, Mike LaFleur, and due to the new offensive pieces they've put around him.
That's a beautiful segue. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place because, on some sense, I see Bryce Hall coming in. I'm like, oh wow, they're gonna run the friggin' football down your throat, and especially with Laken Tomlinson, you got those two nasties up front with AVT and Laken, and you're just gonna run the football down people's throat. On the other hand, I like just dream of Michael LaFleur going, man, now throw the playbook out the window. Let's cut up. Let's do some crazy flying crap all over the place and really unlock Zach Wilson. Does it have to be one label or the other? Or is it going to be just a mix of both?
You know, I lean towards the former, right? The run heavy attack, not take the game out of Zach's hands, but establish where you should be dominant. And when I look at the Jets roster, especially on offense, I would say the whole roster, though, including the defense, the area where I think the Jets can be a top 3 unit in all of football and maybe even number 1 if everything broke their way is the guard duo that they have. You have a guy that's played at an extremely high level in Laken Tomlinson. That's why he was given a lot of money to come here. And you have an ascending player going into year 2 in Elijah Vera Tucker that had put out some great tape as a rookie last year. So knowing you have those two things in a scheme that's going to ask them to get on the move a lot, ask them to climb to the second level, get outside, make blocks that takes a lot of athleticism from guys that size, why not utilize it to your advantage and frustrate defenses that way and put yourself in a better position on manageable downs like second down, like third down? Don't find yourself in constant 3rd and 10. So that's why I lean towards the former. Now, to say they're going to completely eliminate the former number 2 overall pick from the impact of the offense would be absolutely ridiculous. Zach Wilson was drafted number 2 overall with huge expectations for a reason. It's the arm talent, it's the mobility, it's the ability to make pinpoint throws at all 3 levels of the field. Now, ironically, it was the short to intermediate area stuff that he seemed to struggle with a lot last year. Now, once again, it goes back to my original point of the show, a command and composure. And if those things fall into line, and those he has an accurate arm when everything's right mechanically with him and with the confidence level. So the short and intermediate throws felt more mental to me last year than lack of talent or physically limited. So I think when all those things come together, maybe, Paul, you build up his confidence, put him in premium positions to succeed, right? If you cross the 50-yard line or you're running the ball or you're forcing the defense to inch up, you're forcing an extra defender in the box because of that run game, get the play action game going with his footwork, with the run, in a sense, established a little bit at some point of this year with the threat of Bryce Hall and Michael Carter in the offensive line, with a huge variable being Mekhi Becton that I'm sure we'll cross that point at some point of this show or in the future. Then you could start pushing the ball down the field because you have a vertical threat in Elijah Moore. You have a guy like Garrett Wilson that knows how to improvise in the intermediate area of the field. I'm still high on Corey Davis. I know nobody else in the world is. I think Corey Davis is a rock solid number 2 player that was signed here to be a number 1. And I think we saw Eric Decker struggle with that his first year. They brought in Brandon Marshall the following year, and he exploded in the number 2 role. Yes, they don't have a 2015 B Marsh, but can the combination of Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson and even Braxton Berrios as a number 4 with competent tight ends in the middle of the field, can that take some pressure off Corey Davis and give him more favorable matchups? It absolutely will. So I think everything is a better circumstance this year, barring health. And I do think when the confidence starts to get built up, then they'll start to ask more of Zach Wilson.
I love that Decker comp. I had never thought of that. And then,
a lot of people forget about 2014 Eric Decker.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And again, and what led to, because I believe if that was right in the 2014 year, he had like 200 something yards. And then that led to that really good season at the end of the year. All right, you brought up Mekhi Becton. Screw it. Let's just get right to it. Okay. So there are 2 things here, and I know I've heard you on Badlands. You're sick and tired of talking about it. You just want to see Mekhi Becton on the field, and we can all shut up.
So do the Jets, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. I have to ask about the 2 most recent nuggets. We did a video on this already on the channel. So Dan Graziano, National Reporter, comes out on Greeny's show. I clipped it up and threw it up on Twitter, and basically he says the Jets coaching staff is frustrated. We've heard that before. And but the new twist is they've kind of thrown their hands up and said, we don't know what else to do. We told him to, like, for instance, now I'm paraphrasing, but meet this weight. He doesn't meet the weight. We're kind of like, okay, we don't know what else to do here. And then Connor Hughes reiterated the Dan Graziano point on his podcast and then added that Mekhi Becton was, quote, pushing 400 pounds at mandatory minicamp. When he stepped on the scale, that's what Connor Hughes said. He said 2 people inside the building confirmed that number to him. Connor, I'm not a doctor, and I know you're not either. But the fact of the matter is, from all the people that are doctors, they say that pushing 400 pounds is an unhealthy weight for the size of Mekhi Becton. And now we're here, and the Jets have already bet on Mekhi Becton. Obviously, they didn't draft an offensive lineman until the 4th round, and sign, at least of the recording of this show, an offensive tackle. And even if they do, it's so late in the process that they didn't do it when they coulda, shoulda, woulda with better pieces. They're all in on Mekhi Becton. I ask you, first off, do you think they regret that right now, knowing everything they do? And number 2, just what do you make of these most recent things, both from Connor Hughes and Dan Graziano? It scares me, man, that I'm like, wow, this is what we're getting. Mekhi Becton knew this was mandatory minicamp. He knew he was going to meet the media. He knew he was going to step up on the scale, and apparently didn't care.
Well, first off, Paul, those things are right in line with what I've heard for a long time. And I'm not obviously Connor does a great job covering this team for The Athletic, and Dan obviously is a national reporter. And, just to piggyback off of them, I've heard those things for a long time about that number or hovering around that number with the weight. And anybody that listens to my work through the draft or at Badlands or some combination of both could probably read through when I'm hammering, or not, hammering the table because he was a great player, but bringing up the possibility of an Ike Ekwonu or Evan Neal in play with the Jets' top 5 pick wasn't just me throwing things out of thin air, right? The Jets had a lot of other needs, but the concern around Becton was so significant that those are things that, obviously can be discussed, and ultimately it didn't go that way, which showed a lot of confidence, I think, in Becton, which is a really, really good sign. But at the end of the day, it goes back to, obviously we need to see him on the field. Obviously, it's no secret that coming off the injury, a long rehab process, that the weight was going to be something that's watched closely. And everything we've heard is that it's not where it needs to be. And that, I would imagine this time, especially with a guy like Duke Manyweather, he is working very hard to get that number down as they approach that arrival date towards the end of July. And then you hope that during training camp, you can, continue to lose weight during the dog days of practice. But obviously it's a concern for the Jets coaching staff, because if you put yourself in their shoes, and to be fair to them, right? You want to be fair to both sides. What I just said, I'm trying to be fair to Mekhi Becton, is that he is obviously working to lose that weight. It's disappointing that it hasn't happened yet, but he should still be given the opportunity to get to that number and then get back on the field and play at a high level like we've seen him do before. On the flip side, you need to be fair to a coaching staff that was not here when he was drafted, that has been put in a situation that last year they got their guy as insurance in Morgan Moses, a guy they really, really liked. So they knew no matter what going into the year that whether it's George Fant, Mekhi Becton, or Morgan Moses, if one of the three, if something goes wrong, they have a competent starting tackle still on both sides of that line. That is not the case going into this season. It's not. And I like Max Mitchell. Max Mitchell was drafted where he was for a reason. I project him as a long-term right tackle that can develop into a serviceable starter. Should not be expected to be that this year. Don't think he's a swing tackle. Don't expect him to play on the left side. And that's it. That's what the Jets have done. They don't have Morgan Moses there this year. So to be fair to the coaching staff that's here, that didn't draft him, that's trying to develop a young quarterback and keep him upright, which was not the case a lot of times last year, and develop an offense, they want stability at the position. And nobody should blame them for that. They're in the right, where whatever direction this goes, it is not going to them. It is going to Joe Douglas. And Joe Douglas has done a lot of really good things. I've loved his last 2 draft classes. He's made some smart moves, obviously, in the trade market and in free agency. But this is one where he's got to be right, because he didn't do anything yet. And yeah, there's time. There's a couple guys in the free agent market, but he hasn't done anything yet to truly protect this going wrong. I've said this before. There's no insurance plan here. And I think that would put the coaching staff in a really bad spot if the worst happens again and they lose Mekhi Becton for a significant amount of time, or he can't play a significant amount of time. And then obviously that puts the coaching staff in a tough spot where they're going to be significantly weak at one of the tackle spots. So I know that's a lot to unpack. That's the long-winded version, to be fair to both sides. But it's also, in my opinion, the biggest concern on this roster right now, because it's a premium spot that has the chain link effect on the young quarterback, the offensive staff, the offensive pieces around them. It's a spot that you can't get by if everything falls out. So I think that it's why I know everybody gets tired of talking about it, including myself. But for the reporters in that building covering this team and showing up to Florham Park all the time, they are right to ask about it every day, because it has to be one of the biggest storylines on this team's success or failures going into this year.
Connor, give it to me straight. Is this competition real to you? George Fant, Mekhi Becton are fighting. I use heavy quotations for people who are watching this on YouTube. George Fant, Mekhi Becton, who knows who could be the left tackle, right tackle? Or does this Jets coaching staff know exactly who's going to be starting where, and they're just not telling us because maybe that's meat on the proverbial treadmill for Mekhi Becton? By not telling him, you're helping him. And on the George Fant side, you're negotiating a contract with him. If you just come out and say, he's our left tackle, then he's going to be like, left tackle money,
Great
please.
point.
Because that's $5 million more. The top five averages on both sides. The top five left tackle average salary is $23 million to change. The top five right tackle is $18 million. Now, I'm not crying rivers for NFL players, but that's the number. So, is it real or is it fake, Connor?
Oh man, you know what? I think it's probably somewhere. Usually, the truth lies in between, right? And right. I think that you nailed it. First off, you don't want to show your hand for a variety of reasons. And George Fant, right, justifiably so, a late bloomer, right? A guy that has disproved a lot of people's thoughts about him when he got signed by the Jets, including myself. Paul, before training camp, will turn 30 years old, right? So,
yes, correct.
If you're George Fant, you've made some good money in the NFL, but you want to get this big contract here or one more big shot. Now, if they do tell you you're the left tackle, well, then he's got to be sitting there, like you said, in his agency, and they're like, cool, pay us like one. Yeah. Show stability at a position that there needs to be stability. But logic tells you that the Jets should be going into camp with George Fant as the left tackle. He is a significantly better player on the left side. And it goes back to my old trickle effect argument of, if Mekhi Becton gets hurt at right tackle or can't play at right tackle, something goes wrong.
Sure.
I do think Max Mitchell, there's a world where he could survive at right tackle. I'm not betting on it.
Sure.
But right. I don't feel that way on the left side. I do not feel that way on the left side. And I don't want to get into the game of Jenga again, or whatever you want to call it, where you started Becton on the left side, you started Fant on the right side, where Fant is a weaker player. We know this. And Becton gets hurt, and then you're flipping Fant back over. I don't think that's fair to a guy that is looked at as a team captain in that building. I don't think it's right at all. So the bottom line is they got to get this deal done with Fant, this extension. In my opinion, he's got leverage, but I think that it won't cost them, the moon and the stars. And I think at the end of the day, they need to go in with a plan for Becton to play on the right side, because the insurance of protecting that side to me is a little bit easier. So I think you're right that they are keeping their cards close to the vest for a variety of reasons for both players involved.
Again, we're speaking with Connor J. Rogers, for Pete's sake, on YouTube. Like the video, hit subscribe, and for Pete's sake, if you aren't following Connor J. Rogers on Twitter, I'm not quite sure what you're doing with your life. And let's get through the rest of this conversation. Let me ask you, so you've brought this up on a variety of shows with the George Fant contract that you have advocated, not to put words in your mouth, but you've advocated the Jets should sign George Fant. And when people have asked you about structure, you've given a bridge-like option that basically, helps out both sides. George Fant gets money this year because right now he has no guaranteed money this year, and then a little bit of that money next year. And then, hey, that motivates him. Jets lock him in. It's all great. Would George Fant take that, or would George Fant, again, look at the offensive tackle room, go, Mekhi Becton's questionable, and then they have all those guys, Chumi Doga, Connor McDermott, Max Mitchell, screw that. I don't want some, peewee deal. The analytics and everything that George Fant, while he may be turning 30 to your point, he doesn't have a 30-year-old body. He was a former basketball player / guy that doesn't have a ton of reps on the body. Could he say, screw that, I want a longer deal? And even though I'm 30, so what? You guys, what's your other option? What's door number B, Jack? Oh, you don't have one? Well, then pay me my money. So would he take that? The bridge thing sounds great to me. I'm phenomenal. You lock him in. Would George Fant take that, you think?
It's a good question because it all comes down to leverage once again.
Right.
Now, in a perfect world where Mekhi Becton comes into camp in shape and looks like the dominant player that we know he can be, Fant loses a lot of leverage really quickly.
Mhm.
So there's the risk side for Fant, besides the fact that if he goes into this year on this deal, like you said, Paul, with no guaranteed money, and he gets hurt this year, it can really demolish his open market next year.
Yeah,
If he plays great for the Jets this year, we know the power of the franchise tag.
sure.
So this goes back to the CBA that the Jets have a lot of player control in this situation,
Hmm.
but there is an argument of one, this guy's done everything the right way. He's due for a contract. He's somebody you want here. You don't want to open up any more holes on this roster. You want to keep the stable spots stable. So there's that side that's the motivation for the Jets to get this done. And you want them happy. It does something right about the locker room, keeping the veteran guys happy that carried themselves the right way. So I think when you look at it, those are the two sides of it of why I'm confident that maybe a bridge deal is a little bit of a pipe dream, but maybe something based off of a bridge deal is right. You're going to guarantee this year. Maybe you're going to guarantee 2023 to get this thing over the finish line. And then if you're George Fant, you're looking at it and going, well, if I keep ascending the way I'm playing at, I got a young body for my age because of the lack of contact, lack of reps. Maybe at 32, I can cash out again with what tackles are
Yeah.
getting paid right now. Veteran tackles are getting paid. So maybe we have to juice up the annual average, right? Maybe that's the trick. There's got to be a trick here somewhere. The Jets did this with John Franklin Myers, if you look at the structure of the deal.
Mhm.
John Franklin Myers, who, in my opinion, was a great extension because I thought he played very well after that extension, despite what people say. The annual average of that deal is very high, all things considered. But the Jets can get out of it whenever they need to. But if he continues to play that well, the annual average is going to look more affordable when the cap goes up and more players at that position get paid, and you have all the control. So that's the questions the Jets have to ask themselves. They are a team under Joe Douglas that traditionally they like having back ends of deals be a little inflated that they can get out of, free up money. But if the player is playing that well, they like the option to not do that. And it's funny, we're having that conversation with George Fant because he's the perfect example.
That's right. That's what I was going to
He
say.
was one of Joe Douglas's first big signings. They signed him at 28 years old. Everybody looked at that deal, Paul, and I guarantee you thought this. I know I thought this. He signs a 3-year contract. A little over 13 million is guaranteed. So you go, okay, he's going to be here the first year of the deal. If he doesn't bomb out, he's going to be here the second year of the deal. The third year is going to be gone. He's going to be a cap casualty.
That's 100% what I said.
They're going to save $10.1 million, or they're going to make him take a pay cut to stay.
Right.
And he was so good that they didn't have to. And that's good by the Jets because they don't care about the $10 million he's making because they have all the cap space in the world right now. So I could see them repeating that structure because it's what they do with everybody. Maybe Fant gets his money guaranteed this year, next year, a very bloated third year. I'm talking like $18 to $20 million, but the Jets can get out of it. And if they do, then Fant can hit the market again at a respectable age for his position.
It's a great point. When Fant signed, I'm like, oh, perfect. Obviously, they're getting out of the deal in 2022, and then boo. Obviously, you just see what happened. Let's go to some free agent talk. Okay, there's been so Larry Ogunjobi's off the board. He ends up signing with the Steelers. Two other guys that they looked at and or brought in for multi-day visits are Riley Reif and Quan Alexander. So feel free to comment on either of those. But is there any other free agents that you, Connor Rogers, would advocate? Say, Jets, what are you doing here? There is this weakness on the team, and I advocate that you sign insert player. It would make sense ahead of training camp, during training camp, in preseason, or what have you. Who is that guy?
Well, obviously, you name the two that make a lot of sense.
Yep.
Riley Reif has played a lot of football in this league at a competent level, not a above average level, but enough where you're not going, this guy is killing us every week. Quan is a guy that I think should be here. And I think if you ask me just straight yes or no, I ultimately really do think there's a good chance he ends up playing for the Jets because they're weak in the middle of the field right now. He's still a really good player. He's a good player in coverage. Their linebackers are not good in coverage. He knows Robert Saleh. If Quan is in a situation where he's forced to take a 1-year deal to rebuild his market again, which seems crazy because you watch the tape and he's still a really good player at a young age. It's kind of bizarre. then doing it with the Jets makes a lot of sense if the money is at least respectable. So I think the Quan one makes a lot of sense to get done. And I think I've said this before too. If you're him, why would you take a deal before all the offseason activities ended? Skip all that. You don't need to be doing that. You've been in the league a long time. You've had a lot of success. Wait till training camp starts back up, and then you can sign the deal and come in. So we'll wait on Quan. The last one, Paul, and maybe bad timing because I know he got arrested this week for
yeah, I saw that.
I don't want to, once again, we don't play doctor. We also don't play lawyer.
Yes.
Dwayne Brown, obviously one of the better tackles in the league for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the arrest, I believe, was for an unregistered handgun at the airport.
That's correct. And the luggage. Yep.
And I believe Quinnen Williams went through a somewhat similar thing
did.
at some point.
He
so
did.
this is more, I don't want to be the one to say this, but it feels like an honest mistake, like a dumb mistake, rather than like, you can't have this guy in the building. Like that's
what it seemed like his agent said in the statement to Josina Anderson earlier today. That's what it seemed like he admitted to. Yeah.
Yes. So if you feel comfortable with everything going on there, and say you get into camp and say, God forbid, what if Mekhi Becton is 400 pounds? It would be insane to me if that's the case, considering that it seems like he's working out, whether it's with Duke or sometimes with Duke or not, whatever it is, working out, what's on the line if you're Mekhi Becton, or say he gets hurt, anything, or just happen in George Fant. Say you have a problem at tackle. That's the guy that I would say, man, we cannot fumble this. We have a year 2 quarterback in a year where we need to take strides forward with the offense, because you not only need Zack to be competent for the sake of Zack and the team and the image around the team, but you need that for Elijah Moore's development. You need that for Garrett Wilson's development. You need that to open up the run game for Breece Hall, Michael Carter, keep the defense off the field. So I know it's crazy to be connecting a guy like Dwayne Brown to this team right now, but that's the biggest wild card, I guess I can give you, that if all of these dominoes fell, there is a path where we somehow end up there.
And by the way, I don't give a flying hoot that Dwayne Brown can only play left tackle. Okay, he can only, because that's been the argument on Jets Twitter. Well, Riley Reef could play both. Screw you, man. I want the guy who can play better football. And that's Dwayne Brown. I don't care. You can flip anyone to anyone's side. Give me the best football player, and we'll figure out the rest later. So, by the way,
that seems crazy.
Completely concur. Yeah, that's been the argument, believe it or not. You've been staying out of those Twitter streets, and good on you, Connor.
I really have this summer, and obviously I'll dive head first back in when there's actual football on.
Right.
But I've been a little bit of on a break, so I missed that. But obviously not to shove PFF grades because I do a podcast there, but I mean he's still grading out as a very capable left tackle too. So even at 36, Dwayne Brown is a fine player.
That segment brought to you by Pro Football Focus. Definitely did not send me a royalty check on that one. Connor, let's get a couple more in here real quick. Who's going to start opposite of Jordan Whitehead at safety? Give me a prediction.
I mean, it's going to be LaMarcus Joyner until it isn't. The problem is, Paul, it was LaMarcus Joyner until it wasn't about 10 snaps into the 2021 NFL season.
Right.
So
yeah,
this is, I keep saying this. If you want to hear the good about the Jets, there's a lot we could talk about going into this year. If you want to hear the bad, which is, a full coverage of it, the middle of the defense is what I'm going to say every time. It's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. I think this is a team that I'm not confident in them stopping the middle of the field passing game or run game right now. And that's because it's CJ Mosley and a lot of question marks at linebacker. And CJ was up and down last year. Jordan Whitehead's a really good player, but it's one of LaMarcus Joyner, Ashton Davis, or maybe even Jason Pinnock next to him. And there's a lot of unprovens. Ashton's had his struggles. Joyner struggled to stay healthy. And then Pinnock is this bit of an unknown, that a corner coming out of college and got to look at corner for the Jets until they moved him to safety. Looked good at safety, but it was so brief. You don't know how to take away stuff from that. So I'll be honest with you, I'm a little surprised. You can't solve every need in one offseason. Otherwise, every team would be in the Super Bowl every year. Super Bowl conversation.
Yeah, right.
But I am a little surprised that the Jets were, not
lackadaisical. I mean, I don't know what it was. I thought Jaquan Brisker was going to be the guy in the second round, to be honest with you.
It felt so obvious that the Jets with that other top 50 pick would just take one of the best safeties because there was so much value there. And I love Breece Hall as much as the next guy.
Sure, yeah.
But it is fascinating to me that they just didn't really try to get much better in that area. So it's one of two things, Paul. Either one, they're wrong and they made a giant mistake, or two, internally they see something in Jason Pinnock or Ashton Davis's development that we don't get to see outside the building.
Right, obviously, yeah.
And we'll see how it plays out.
All right, Connor, last one before we get you out of here. And so, over the last couple of months, several players on the Jets have been named as a potential person they could trade away, a potential person they could move. I'm going to give you the name, and you tell me whether it's bold, there's no way, they have no value, or you could kind of see maybe it actually happening. I'll throw Bryce Hall out there first. Outside of apparently who is that just Chris Canty. So I know you do some work on ESPN radio every once in a while, but Chris Canty came out and said that the Jets corners are quote unquote a little thin. Not sure I agree with that one, old Canty, but that's all right. We can't all bat 1,000. But the thought is Sauce Gardner, you got DJ Reed, you got Michael Carter II. Where the heck does Bryce Hall, where does Bryce Hall play in all this? Would you trade him or would you keep him?
I keep him. I don't think you get any value back for him, and I think having corner depth in this league is a massive, massive advantage. He could play. If you want to get him on the field in some kind of capacity in a perfect world that no one's hurt, and corners get hurt every single year. Let's not forget, Isaiah Dunn was on the field week 1 at one point last year. That's how fast corners get hurt. I would keep him on the field, and I would keep him in a role that maybe he can match up with tight ends, because I think that's where his skill set is very impactful. If you have teams trying to run out, we watched the Falcons game last year. The Falcons ran out Kyle Pitts against Michael Carter. Kyle Pitts is 6'5". He's twice the size of Michael Carter, and he can run by him. It was a no contest for Michael Carter. Why not put Bryce Hall on the field in those situations? So I keep him because you're not getting any kind of return on him.
By the way, I prefer Bryce Hall on Kyle Pitts as opposed to John Franklin Myers. Well, why did they do that? I still don't understand. They just gave him money. I guess they had to cover tight ends. Not great. Speaking of Bryce's, Bryce Huff, I know he's your boy, but there's been some talk. I think Connor Hughes or Rich Samini, maybe both of them, were saying, hey, the Jets have so many good defensive linemen, they can't keep them all. Maybe flip one of them for a mid-round pick, and it's better than potentially cutting a guy. Bryce Huff was one of the names that was listed. What do you say?
I wouldn't do that. I think that, number one, he's an ascending guy to me, right? Where Bryce has played really well when he's played, but he's, obviously look at the numbers. He's had 4 sacks in 2 years, and nobody's going to be in love with that. But I think he's been hurt a lot. He had the back injury last year. I don't think that there's a scenario where they are too deep at edge rusher. And I think Robert Saleh will tell you the same thing. So let's say in a perfect world, Carl Lawson is not coming back and playing 80% of the snaps. He's coming off an injury. They're going to ease him back in. Jermaine Johnson's a rookie, right? So those are 2 guys that are going to be rotated a lot. Then you have, obviously, John Franklin Myers can play the big end. Jacob Martin is going to come in and rush on passing downs, 3rd and longs. He's a specialist. I mean, and then it gets thin. I like Vinny Curry, but Vinny Curry didn't play football last year, okay? Mm-hmm. So do you want to be one more Carl Lawson injury away from, we don't know? Keep Bryce Huff. Maybe the rep management will actually keep Bryce Huff healthy. I don't agree that you get a mid-round pick. When I think mid-round pick, I'm thinking like the Chris Herndon trade or a 3rd rounder.
Yep.
Nobody's giving you that. If anything, maybe somebody flip you a 6 that has conditional terms. Pass rusher and corners, they get hurt a lot, and they can, completely destroy your defense when you don't have any. Like the Jets didn't have any last year. So no, not a guy I would move. Maybe I sound like a prospect hugger right now, but there's no value of moving these guys. I bet on their upside instead.
And 2 last names here. So Mike White was brought up. They said when he was slapped with his RFA tender, his restricted free agent tender, there was interest from other teams. If they would have signed him, they would have had to give the Jets a 5th round pick. Obviously, that did not happen. And it kind of speaks to the roster construction argument. Do you keep 3 or 2? If you keep 2, that helps that defensive line or one of the others if you're able to flip Mike White. Does Mike White have any value, or is that kind of a pipe dream for people that have brought that up?
If somebody needs an arm, I would trade him. I think you're fine with Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco. I don't know what kind of difference Mike White is going to make in that scenario. I'm with you, Paul. You don't carry 3 quarterbacks. You don't do that. So for me, if you can get anything back for him, I would take the return. I would even take a 6th round pick back if that's ultimately what it was. It's nothing against Mike White. It's the fact that it's not going to make your season if he comes in and plays due to an injury.
All right, last one. This is the one that's gotten the most chit-chat, the most chatter. Denzel Mims. Again, you guys have even talked about this on Badlands. Is Denzel Mims the second coming of some sort of god, or are they just blowing him up to say, oh, Denzel Mims looking pretty good, sell him off, Chris Herndon his ass? Like, what's happening here? Give me the truth on Denzel Mims, to trade or not to trade.
I think they would love to move him for some kind of return like you saw with Herndon last year, because if you're Joe Douglas, you made this selection. So
Yeah.
trading a guy you took in the second round for a fifth or sixth rounder is a really bad look. Doing it for a fourth is not good, but I think they would do that.
Hmm.
The problem I always go back to, Paul, is that if Corey Davis gets hurt again, they are very small at the wide receiver position. They have no size. Garrett Wilson plays around 180. Elijah Moore and Braxton Berrios are short. I know people will go, who cares? But in a scheme that these guys blocking matters so much on the outside, you need some kind of depth in terms of size in that Corey Davis role. So do I think they would trade Mims for a fourth? I do. I don't think anybody's offering that right now with the kind of funk he was in last year. And I do think there is a purpose to keeping him as depth, hoping that he breaks out. And maybe he's a guy that could boost his value back a little bit at some point. But all in all, it kind of feels like a little bit of a sunk cost there.
Yeah, and it feels that way to me too, which again, you sometimes have to separate that because again, you go second round pick, I can't just throw this guy away, but ultimately you just got to call it how you see it, whatever
Could be
ultimately.
nothing.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you're going to have to kind of roll with that. Connor, you handsome bastard, before you get out of here, plug everything you got going on because, of course, we're recording this a couple weeks out from training camp. You got NFL SE going on, Badlands, your Mets podcast, so we know because I'm here in Syracuse, so we're just piping guys up to you like Francisco Alvarez and things of that nature. But what do you got coming up here this fall, man?
Well, as always, we're going to be covering everything with the Jets on Badlands on our Patreon, recapping every game right after Sundays, doing the midweek show previews, a lot of good video content. Film Room will be back. If you like the national NFL coverage, the NFL draft, college football, all that stuff, the NFL coverage as well, NFL Stock Exchange on PFF, we do that podcast. And that'll be 2 times a week right now, be 3 times a week during the season. Everything for SMY, Mets, Jets related, and it's you can follow me at Connor J. Rogers on Twitter. So thanks, Paul. I need a long carpet there to get all that stuff promoted, but it's always good to get it out.
I'm glad you must have a team by you that's just handing you like kind of reading cards every time you
I
got to do
should
this.
staple one right on my computer right here and just like knock these out.
Yeah, boom. There you go. Connor, I always appreciate it. You're a friggin' superstar, man, for Pete's sake. I don't know how you have time in the day to do anything, let alone join this little old Boy Green podcast. But I always appreciate it when you do, man. And again, we're going to have to check back down the line on the next record you broke or the next job you have because I'm losing track, man.
Well, the last time I was on, you were trying to get to 1,000, right?
Yes.
And
So we're
are
at
you
2,000
over
plus.
2 right now?
Yeah, we're 2.2K, something like that.
So let's make it a goal. Every time I come on, try to double. Next time, hopefully you'll be at 4, maybe 5,000. People listen. Take it from me. People love Jets offseason content. So I think you're in a good place. I think that subscriber count will really boost up when there's actually some football games going on. So it's going to be a lot of fun this season.
Now we got a new thing to check off the bucket list, doubling it every time. So, Connor, we're going to have to start scheduling more frequent visits.
Yeah, I'm going to collect royalties at some point, Paul. You know me.
That's right. We will come collecting sooner rather than later. We'll make that happen. Maybe when we got a few more Ks on the end of that, we'll make that happen. Connor, as always, man, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Thanks for having me.